Hi, I'm James McGuire, and today we're talking about two very big ideas. One is the role of artificial intelligence in networking, and the second is the trend toward the democratization of technology. Not sure we can fit them both into one conversation, but we're going to try. To discuss that, I'm joined by Nabil Bukhari, CTO for Extreme Networks. Nabil, hello to you and happy Friday.
James, thank you so much. It's really good to see you again. And boy, those are big topics, and I'm really looking forward to digging in with you here.
I'm a little concerned. Do you think we can fit those topics into one conversation and people won't wonder, like, well, what were James and Nabil talking about? I mean, I think our goal will be to try to make it all fit together, right?
Well, that's the goal. Look, the beauty of both of these topics are there are multiple layers. So you can
Right.
stay kind of at the surface, you can dive deep, and they're equally, useful in my opinion. So yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about the first one. I think it's interesting, the idea of AI and networks, because of course, artificial intelligence, we know, is software that can grow by itself, develop by itself without human intervention. It's self-learning software. And on the other hand, we've got networks, which are the pipes that carry information and data all over the world, all over the internet. And so, we hear about cloud and servers and everything, but really without networks, we've got nothing. Now we realize that AI is reshaping networks. So what's up with that? What is the role of AI and machine learning in the world of networks?
James, this is absolutely a topic that is du jour, if you would. A lot of people are talking
Yep.
about it, and
Right.
might I say, the industry doesn't really do it justice, and they kind of confuse the whole equation. But that's just the world of marketing. So, but we'll leave marketing aside today, and
Anything with
we'll
AI these days gets a little confused. There's a lot of AI washing
yeah.
going on, I find, but that's a separate topic. But yeah, please.
Yeah, and just a little. I have a 4-year-old, and I actually just recently bought a toy for it, which actually claimed that it had some AI, and I was like, I'm not sure if I really want AI in the toys of a 4-year-old. But as you said, we'll leave that topic
Well,
for a separate conversation.
because you'd think like the 4-year-old has got a very active, rapidly growing brain. Why does she even need AI in their toy? I
I
mean, for
know
goodness
it's
sakes,
just
but okay.
all right. So AI and ML. So James, first thing is that we tend to bunch them together as AI and ML, but they're actually very different technologies from each other. And
Interesting.
I won't go into the detail of what really is the difference between them. But generally speaking, machine learning is more about organizing the data, and AI is more about learning from data. And now these are very, very high level generalizations, but just
Right.
generally speaking,
I like it.
they are meant for two different problems, right? But having said that, a lot of us, we use both ML and AI, so it's okay that we'll bunch them together.
Sure.
Now, AI and ML for networks, boy, that is a deep topic. So what
It
I'll tell
is.
you is that why is it useful in networking, where it is used, and where we should not use it. So I'll address all of those. So
Right.
generally speaking, when you're using either ML or using AI, you're using on data that, one is a lot of it, and the second is that it's changing pretty rapidly. Look, if
Okay.
it's only like 10 things that change once in a day or once in a week, there's no point in deploying ML or AI for that. It's cost prohibitive. You're better
Right.
off just doing it in an Excel, for the lack of
Right.
any other example,
Sure.
right? So that's the first thing. Now, obviously, as you see the networks today, and you rightly said, networks are at the core of everything that we do, not just work related or technology related. The whole society really truly runs on networks and connectivity. So
Truly.
networks are very broad, and
Right.
they're changing very rapidly because they're responding to real-time situations. So it lends itself very well to application of AI and ML. So that's the first thing. Why now?
Right.
It wasn't really present. AI has been around for quite some time now, but the AI
Decades.
in networks is rather recent, if you would.
Hmm.
So it's a good match, number one. Number two is, so generally speaking, it can be used for two things. One is what we call as optimization. The number two is what we call as risk mitigation. And the
Hmm.
last one, which is just now evolving, is that how do you take the data from the network and you really run AI and ML for revenue generation? And those are
Hmm.
three big different topics. Now, most of the times when people talk about AI and ML and networking, the very start, it's more about ops related stuff, optimization. Well, I really want to look at what's happening in my network.
Right.
No human can actually sit and kind of like, the scrolling numbers of the screen and can really follow it. I'm going to apply ML to it. So I really can structure this data and I can glean some information and do it in real time and so on and so forth. So that's the first
Let me
use
ask you a dumb
of it.
question about that, if I may. Is it
Mhm.
mainly when we get into like software-defined networking when that AI becomes a role, or not necessarily? Even some of those good old-fashioned
Not
legacy
necessarily.
networks. Okay, good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because think about it this way. Any piece of networking, be it hardware, be it software, or be it cloud driven, they all generate data, operational data, environmental
Right.
data, right? So
Right.
so this AI is mostly related to that data. Oh, look, are my switches working well? My Wi-Fi, my RF
Gotcha.
spectrum, is there any issues?
Yep.
So on and so forth. Is there any application degradation and blah, 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 and do it at a very, very, very broad scale and do it real
Hmm.
time all the time. So that's the first use case of that. And this is the most prevalent use case today, right?
Okay.
The second use case is around risk mitigation. That's where, a lot of the security stuff comes in. That's where threat, identification, threat mitigation, anomaly detection, behavioral, stuff. So
Cybersecurity, really, basically.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? All the way from your networking infrastructure to your applications to your users in the end. And of course, if you talk about IoT, well, that expands it,
Hmm.
substantially. So that's the second part where I think AI and ML is very useful and it's starting to creep in.
Hmm.
The third portion, which I think is at the very start of it, is that, okay, well, if everything is happening on the networks and the networks are getting super distributed, these enterprises that used to be in campuses or branches is now becoming this infinite enterprise that just go anywhere and
Right.
everywhere, wherever
Right.
the consumers are.
Cloud,
Then the
edge, everything. Yeah.
Exactly, right. Your home, my home, our coffee shop, it's like
Sure.
the office is wherever we are, right? So if that is the case, then the data from the network can directly be correlated to the behavior of the user or the consumer, and thus can give you insights around revenue generation. Now, retail is pretty big on that. Large scale stadium, like we're the official partners with NFL and many other
Oh,
sporting, groups out there, both on the United States side and on the European side. And what we've learned a lot is that how people use their applications and their phones while they're in stadiums is a very good input into how they're going to spend money. Or
that's the
further down
part.
in
If
the road,
just
yeah,
just
further
a
down,
quick
how are
quick
they going to embed
tangent.
it? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, then that's the thing. Some people refer to that as the big brother aspect. Am I correct in that one?
So yes and no, because look, data is data. Data by itself is neither good nor bad. It doesn't really,
Right.
it's neutral, if you would. What you do
Yes.
with it, right? So I mean, like you can talk about, you can say the same amount of data can be used for surveillance, or the same amount of data could be actually used to make sure that you are having the best experience possible.
Right.
That's in the hand of whoever uses that. Same thing with ML and AI. They by themselves are pretty neutral. What do you do with that is entirely up to you. So
Sure.
that's the new category of AI and ML that is developing. Now I'll tell you another thing related to it. So AI and
Please.
ML, if you're
Yeah.
applying it for operations, that's fine, that's great, that's good. There's a trust factor involved in it. No matter
Mm.
what we say, people are not ready to hand the entire, their networks to AI. Human intervention is still really, really important. And it's not because of technology, but because of trust.
Trust between the individual and the vendor, you mean, in this case?
So it's more about the trust between us as humans and the
Yes.
AI.
Okay.
so think
Whether
of
we trust the
so
technology, we probably shouldn't trust it too much, but we may. I think consumers have come to trust technology a remarkable amount.
it has. I mean, I think about it this way, like planes, I always give the examples of, like, co-pilots and autopilots up in the planes. They've been doing it for 30 years. But when it comes to driving, it's a little bit recent. But when it comes to letting AI drive your networks, we are just not at a point where operators are allowing that or are really comfortable to
Right.
let AI do it completely. So that's
Sure.
where, so there's a lot of evolution, a lot more now than 5 years ago. So there's lots of improvements in there. So that's there. So that's okay. But as you get into this revenue generation stuff, which is a little bit more related to people, there is another issue that raises its head, and that's the bias of AI.
Yes, that's a hot issue these days. Explainability and bias. It's a key issue, right? Right.
Absolutely. And look, up till now in the networking world, people are just like, oh yeah, and ML. And look, and very you know, putting in a plug for ourselves, but we are the first networking vendor that actually started talking about that. Look, AI is not just going to be for your operations, it's going to be a lot of different things. So we need to switch to explainable AI today. So at
Right.
this point in time, we are the only vendors in networking that really go towards at the very start explainable AI, because as it becomes closer and closer to your consumer, it's the bias is going to become a really critical part, and the explainability is going to be really critical. And I predict that at some point in time, not only is going to be good to have, there are probably going to be laws around it where it will be must to have. So anybody who's thinking about AI in the context of networking, starting on the track with the explainable AI from the very start
Right.
is the right thing to do. So those are the three big areas where AI is kind of useful, and a little bit of differences between them. Um, I'll
Right.
stop here because we can
Yeah,
keep going.
those are big ideas. The explainability piece I find really fascinating. There's obviously a lot of pressure
Mhm.
from consumer groups and other people in terms of explainability. I mean, when a bank puts out a loan and the algorithm, crunches the numbers and it says yes or no to
Yeah,
the loan applicant, the bank has got to be able to explain why did you say yes or no to that loan.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so people say, well, we're going to make progress in explainability. I have a slight doubt about that, and only
Mhm,
because the algorithm at some level becomes a black box. Is
mhm,
maybe the data scientists, the deep geeks know exactly what's going on in there. Do the
mhm.
middle managers really know what's going on deep inside of the algorithm to truly explain it? I'm not totally sure.
So great question, and I think your gut feel is correct, but there are ways to get around this. So let's say
Okay.
think about it. That's very much dependent on the vendor. So look, in our environment, when we do put AI out there, even for networking and stuff, and it just pops out. I'm just making a very simple example. It tells you like, well, I found this thing, and this is my insight, and you should go and change this in all of
Right.
your locations globally. Let's just say as simple as that.
Sure.
We give our operators who are just sitting there, they can either just say, okay, great, just do it. Or if they don't trust it, they can actually click the button and ask the AI to explain. And the AI will walk you through. I found A, and typically A goes with B. So I looked for B and the B was there, and so on and so forth. And therefore, I'm giving you that ability. But that's not for everything. Actually, very, very few vendors actually give you that kind of explainability at the mid-management level, as you were talking about. But
Right.
that's our goal. That's what we want to do, because we want to make AI accessible to people, not as a black box, not as something they're like, oh, it's like, ET, and I really don't want to go too close to it, but
Right.
something that people can trust and use in their daily lives. It's really, truly bringing the advantages of it, artificial intelligence and human intelligence, together. I don't
Hmm.
really believe that the future belongs to one or the other. I
Hmm.
believe the future belongs to a really good collaborative environment between the two. And that's kind of like our philosophy behind it, and it shows in our products.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Um, well, I think that brings us fairly naturally to the idea of the democratization of technology, which is a pretty wild idea in that you think about something that is democratized. It's not accessible only to the elites, the C-suite, or the tech geeks. It really
Mhm.
means everyone can do it. I mean,
Yeah.
in a sense, cloud computing was a democratization of technology in that
Mhm.
in the old days, you have to have a big data center to really be a big, powerful corporation. Now you can rent a data center, through
Mhm.
AWS or Azure. It's sort of the
Yeah.
democratization of the data center.
Yeah.
What is your sense of the democratization of technology? Where are we going with that? What does that mean to you?
It's James, it's a question that's very near and dear to my heart.
Right, mine too.
And it's really important. Democracy, yes, as we know democracy, yes, it can be messy at times, but it is the best thing that we have
Right,
as
right,
humanity, right?
right,
So and I really believe that bringing the ideals of democracy to technology are really critical, because technology being such an embedded, integral, and cardinal part of our human society at this point in time, if you don't
right,
bring those ideals of democracy to it, it might not turn out very good for us. I'll just leave it there.
right,
So,
right.
so, so the first thing is, well, how do you describe democratization? Before I go there, let me add another thing: why it is more important now than ever before. Look,
Okay.
technology was moving very fast as is, and then this pandemic happened.
Right.
And this pandemic just literally accelerated everything by 10x.
Totally.
The use of technology, the use of networking,
Right.
all of a sudden, you and I now all of a sudden, well, we might not go to work, we might work from home, we might work from coffee shop, we might
Sure.
not go to a store, we might shop somewhere else, we might go to school simultaneously online and in person. We
Sure.
might talk to our doctors, and my doctor might be somewhere else, my clinician somewhere else, and my test center somewhere else, and we're all on a Zoom call sending data.
Right.
Like
Right.
whichever way you look at it, the dependence of the whole society on the network is kind of, or technology as a whole has kind of really exploded. I think it's
Mm.
only going to accelerate. We call it the infinite enterprise. Enterprises are not going to stay bounded
Right.
in offices and in
No.
campuses or in big hospital. It's out and it's never coming back. So with that context, it's even more important, right, that technology is available to everybody, right? Because be it businesses or governments or hospitals or schools, if they cannot use this technology, earlier it might be like, okay, well, I don't really have an online thing, but look, I have a great school campus. So I can bring the students here and I can provide them the best education, best teachers and stuff. Well,
Right.
in addition to that, you still need to be able to reach the student now in a post-pandemic world, hopefully when we
Absolutely.
get to a post-pandemic world. So that's
Right.
the urgency of the democratization. Now, what is democratization? I think it's just the ideals of democracy. Number one, it is accessible to everybody.
Hmm.
Accessible doesn't mean that, oh, yeah, I have a showroom of Ferrari out there. Yeah, I can go look at it. Well, that's not accessibility.
Right. Right.
The key is that people can use technology within their constraints.
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
constraints typically are, resources, be it like time resources, people resources, talent resources, money resources. And number two is in a time frame where they can actually get value from it. Now that
Mm.
second part is really, really critical, because first part, you're just like, oh, so essentially we just need to make it cheap. Well,
Right.
that's one
And,
part
and
of it.
easily usable.
Bingo. So the
Yeah.
time to value is that we need to do it in such way that anybody can get in and get value out of it without having to be either a very large bank or a cloud, like very large cloud titan or
Sure.
big government and stuff. So that's the democratization. And there comes multiple things from it. So one thing is that if you're going to do this, technology cannot stay proprietary or black box, because
Right.
as long as it stays proprietary and black box, it is held by a few. So
Yes.
open source plays a big role in it. Standardization plays a big role on it. Competition plays a big role in it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one part of it. So openness of the technology. Second thing is that the cost part of it, and cloud computing just really turned it over its head. As you
Totally.
pointed out, you
Yeah.
can spin up a data center and almost practically unlimited amount of compute power very cheaply at this
Right.
point in time. The last one is the ease of use, the know-how, which is related to how many people can actually do it. Yeah, I would say that, oh, you don't really have to go to school for that. If you want to, that's great. But there's so much, like companies like ourselves, we're investing so much in training people, not just like,
Mm-hmm.
very technical training, but how to use it, the business aspect of it and stuff. So Extreme Academy is a program that we do where we provide all of this free to anybody in the world who
You mean
wants to do
you're
it.
teaching them how to use network technology? What are you
How to
teaching them?
understand it, how to use it, how to understand the business aspects of it, how to understand the
Uh-huh.
use cases of it. And
Okay.
it's a program that we do because it's our effort in the democratization of technology. So that's the third part of it. So all of these coming together is really about democratization. And the
Yeah.
other part also I will say is that from as a business leader, the trickle down effect, right? So, but not the trickle down effect as an economy, but
Right.
it is
Right.
like, you go ahead and you put your best technology in your highest model car, but
Yeah.
how quickly do you bring it to the trim level that people actually buy?
It
So
usually
that's
takes
really
years for that to happen. Right.
exactly right. And that was the case in networking as well. But for us, you can buy an entry level networking device or something that costs $1 million, and they all have the same capabilities behind the scene through our cloud. That too is part of democratization. So,
Interesting.
so, so these are all these aspects of democratization that I believe are just absolutely critical. And
Yeah.
vendors who do not follow that, it will hurt them from a business
Yeah.
point of view. I think so.
Interesting about, I mean, the other, I sort of the challenge with the democratization, and which I think on balance, it's been an extremely positive force for humankind. I think there's sort of the threat and the promise of democratization, because when a technological tool becomes widely available, it also falls into the hands of the bad guys who didn't used
True.
to have it, and now they do. And some of
Mhm.
those folks, there's, little cells of people doing ransomware, they wouldn't have had access to
Yeah.
that kind of, high level technology before. Now they're really
Yeah.
working as these ransomware angles. And it's like, uh-oh, we let the cat out of the bag, and some people have it
Yeah.
that shouldn't have it. I don't know if there's an answer to
Yeah.
that, but it is a threat at the same time.
That's James. That's a great idea, but I'll kind of like take it back to that. Look, democracy as a concept is not absolutely perfect. It's messy, but it's the best thing that we got, right? So
Right.
I will say the same thing here. That yes, are there at times disadvantage of it? Yes, it falls into the wrong hands. We have seen examples of that. Um, but overall, the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages. And the other part is that the more democratized it is, the less dependent we are on only the few to keep us safe. I'm talking from a cybersecurity point of view. The more
Right.
open source there is, the more availability there is. Generally speaking, it really improves the reliability, the security of the whole technology anyway. So the more people that are involved in it, because no company is big enough to kind of like really lock it down and then keep it secure as well. So
Right.
so are there challenges? Absolutely, there are. But democratization is not just for the most high end, locked in technology. If you the whole concept, the most of the world when it comes to technology are sitting somewhere in the middle. There are the early adopters,
Right.
yes, but then the rest of the world is kind of like in the middle, and there's some that are more like laggards. So
Right.
the best advantage to society, if you would, is by democratizing all of it in the middle and making
Mhm.
sure that the really useful technology doesn't stay in the elite for too long, and
Right.
it can come down market as quickly as possible. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this in terms of like what is the next shift in the future of work, and of course we know that work from home, COVID has revolutionized that. In a sense, technology was the quote unquote winner of the pandemic so far. But
yeah.
so do you see a future shift in the next chapter of work that we haven't already discussed? What's going to
I
be going
I
on?
I do, and I'll keep it short because again, that's another one of the topic that I speak quite a bit about, and
That is
as
a
a
big
company,
topic, right?
yeah, as a company, as Extreme, we talk a lot about it, and we're kind of at the forefront of it. But just very generally speaking, look, work has always been stereotyping here a little bit, generalizing here a little bit. But work has like, okay, well, you get into your car, you come to work. When you come to the work, here is the culture of the company. Here's the how we work, our methodology. You do that, and
Right.
then you say, I'm done with work. I'm going to go home. Some
Sure.
variation of that, right?
Right.
That has just completely changed, especially within the pandemic and hopefully soon after the pandemic. Now the boundary between what is work, what is office, what is home, and what is personal life, it's kind of like all blurred,
It's
and
blurry. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
yeah, it'll stay like that. So that really gives rise to this infinite enterprise, infinite business, and there are three core tenets that I believe that are happening, and we'll see them accelerating moving forward. One is the one that we already talked about. It's infinite distribution.
Right.
Whether you are working or buying or studying or getting healthcare or government services or what have you, everything in the middle, you will do it from anywhere you want.
Hmm.
And you will demand the same experience. It used to be okay that generally I go into the office to see my doctor, but once in a while I have to do a call with him or her, and the call was only like 10% as satisfactory as a personal
Right.
visit. I was
Right.
okay with it. No longer. I want it to be the same level. And this applies to everything. So it'll be anywhere, everywhere. And you and I, as consumers, are going to demand a consistent experience no matter where we're accessing it from.
Wow,
That's number
that's
one.
a big ask, really. Yeah.
It is. And businesses who are not thinking about it right now are going to suffer. That is
Mhm.
my prediction. And some will not, and there will be a big shift in which businesses are successful and which are not. And I'm using businesses for everything, not just
Sure.
your regular
Organizations,
enterprise.
colleges,
Organization,
whatever. Yeah.
exactly, everything. So that's one part. The second part is that all organizations have to become more consumer centric. And by the way, not like, oh, customer first, customer is always right. That's like, the age old kind of like lip service of consumer centricity.
Sure.
Consumer centricity means that you are actually using, and this is, by the way, a little bit of that AI and data kind of comes in.
Oh, good.
I need to spend technology and real money to know what my consumers want at any given time, at anywhere in the world. And I need to make sure that I'm delivering it to them. And by the way, that cannot happen without data. And data and
Right.
ML and AI all comes together. That was the third part that I was talking about, the new
Okay.
bucket that is
Good. I think we
coming in,
tied it
right?
together. Good. Okay.
Yeah, so that comes together. And the last part is I 100% believe that we are getting towards a world where everything has to scale to one. Now, what do I mean by scale to one?
Wow,
Scale to
that's a big
one,
idea. Okay, Nabil, work me through that
yeah,
one. Whoa. Okay.
yeah. So look, when we talk about scale, we talk about, oh, well, I have 2 sites and now I have 20,000 sites and I have 200,000. So we typically think about scale as being broader. But when it comes to consumers and when it comes to consumer centricity or experience and stuff, the scale actually goes the other way around. It's a lot easier to build something that is just good enough for 100,000 people as opposed to something that is perfect for each one of those 100,000 of people.
Right.
So scale to one, each one, every single one of us, hyper personalization, ultimate personalization. We have entered that phase. And I think the next 10 years are going to be all about that. So those are the
Oh,
three big things
hyper
around.
personalization. So they're going to give me exactly a fantastic blueberry pie because
Mhm.
they know that I love blueberry pie,
Uh,
and they're going to make this and that. They're going to let a certain type of music is going to be playing as I consume my blueberry pie. But that's different
yeah,
from the next person next to me because that person likes pumpkin pie, and it's really going to be
yeah.
some
I
some
mean,
some vendor provider is really going to do that.
100% think about it this way, right? I'll give you a very simple example that you're wearing a really nice jacket, right? You can go buy that jacket either off the shelf, you can get it stitched bespoke for you, or there's something in the middle called made to measure, which is neither off the shelf, not for you. This is the world we're heading to. It will get to where it can be done
Uh-huh.
very quickly, wherever you are, hyper personalized, stitched for you at the cost that you used to pay off the shelf. I'm just taking one example. You can take it to medicine, you can take it to
Sure.
education, you can take it to whatever. That's the world that will happen, which also brings us to the first thing that you and I talked about. All of this is only possible through technology.
Right.
And thus,
Right.
we will see more and more and more and more of technology. And we need to democratize it more and more and more so it can reach to everybody. So all three things really, truly work together.
I think humankind is exactly wrestling with those questions. Whether we're going to win or not, I'm not totally sure, but I want us to win. And there's no doubt that
Yeah.
we do need more technology if we're going to cope, whether it's climate change or whatever it is. We need technology to battle the things we need to battle.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your sense. You've talked about this certainly, but the future of network technology specifically, AI and ML with the actual pipelines, and
Mhm.
maybe you've covered that. But is there something else in terms of a forecast several years out what that's going to look like?
Yeah, so I think there are multiple things happening in the networking world. So one thing is that, we've always talked about networks in terms of like, oh, well, these are wired networks, big pipes. Well, this is Wi-Fi and that's cellular. So one thing is all of that is going to come together
It
because,
is. Okay. The
because
wired and the
yeah,
Wi-Fi is going to come together. Okay. Well, I want to hear this.
everything,
All right.
everything, right? Because,
Okay.
and this is how to think about it. Because when you talk about wired or wireless or cellular or cable or now the low orbit enterprise like satellites and stuff like that, those are just simply connecting technologies, right? So how you actually connect, there will be many different ways on how you connect, but once you connect, what you're able to do with it, the experience, the security, the policy around it, the AI and the ML and the data and everything, all of that will get collapsed together because it's
Uh-huh.
literally going to be an infrastructure layer at the bottom. Use whatever technology is available wherever to generate that infinite distribution to go to anybody, anywhere in the world. and then collect everything together, and that's the cloud. That's why cloud is at the top of all of this, because that whole consolidation doesn't work without the cloud. So a massively distributed infrastructure, a massively consolidated, and almost well, I should just leave it there. Massively consolidated and centralized cloud-like centralized, intelligence and stuff. That's the future of networking.
Let me ask a dumb question about that, because I have that's a big idea. I'll see if I can bring that down to my very low level. Is that, I've got my desktop here at the home and it's wired in, and then I'm going to grab my phone. I'm going to run around. I'm going to work on my phone. It's actually, cellular. How does that literally translate into those two modes being collapsed into one? There's still actually going to be different transmission technologies, correct?
Correct. So that's the connecting technology. So think about it. Some of it is already starting to happen. Like even today, it doesn't matter which operating system you're a fan of, Android, Windows, or Mac. I'm a Mac person, if you would. You can already start something on one. You can already start an application or a video or something like that on your Mac, and then take it to your iPhone. You can do it today, right?
Sure.
Now think about this, that you can do that not only between your devices, but you can do it across any connecting technology. So right now, you might be seeing a really super premium 4K or 5K HD movie on your desktop because you're on a fiber to the home, but you get onto the cellular, and the experience is not the same. But moving forward, that is going to be the same, and that'll go wherever you will go. And now it's not just for your video, it is for your work, it is for your education, it is for your healthcare. And now start imagining that this will happen not only when you are stationary somewhere, but when you're in transits. You will get the same experience in your planes. You'll get the same experience in your cars. You'll get the same experience if you're on a bicycle, right? So that's kind of where we are headed. And in order to make that possible, the key to this on a distributed level is the networking industry.
Right.
And the networking industry has to kind of like take their, shaded glasses off and really start thinking about the future. And unfortunately, the networking industry, generally speaking, is the slower part of technology up till now. Very true. I actually believe that compute kind of made some of these changes early on. Then came storage. Unfortunately, the networking part kind of like got stuck with a couple of vendors and kind of like stayed pretty small until very recently. And now it is that it's a little bit more democratized, if you would. It's not like single vendor, hegemony and stuff like that. So what's happening is that now it's moving very fast. For us as Extreme, that is the mission that we have. That not only create the best possible experiences for the people who are our customers and our partners, but change the damn industry so that we can actually play our role in this future version of society, which is going to be very dependent on networking technology.
Totally. I want to make sure I didn't. Did you have a couple more thoughts there in terms of the future?
Oh gosh, don't give me an open hand,
because
I can just go on and on.
That's good. We're very good. That was absolutely fascinating. Nabil, thank you very much. That was a ton of really fascinating stuff. I learned a ton, and really my brain is going from that. So greatly appreciate you sharing your expertise today. Thank you very much.
James, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking with you. Yeah.
All righty.